The moment my mother stood up at my father's birthday dinner and called me the most selfish daughter she'd ever raised, everyone expected me to apologize. Instead, I opened my phone. I transferred ownership of the lake house. Then I canceled the monthly payment that kept my parents from losing it. Nobody noticed. Not yet. My mother was still talking. Madison only thinks about herself, she said, raising her glass. She's successful, she has money, and yet she can't do one simple thing for this family without making everyone feel guilty. My father nodded. My brother Tyler looked at me and smiled. And my sister-in-law Jessica whispered, "Here we go again." They thought I was about to defend myself. They had no idea I was about to change all of their lives. My name is Madison Carter. I'm 32 years old, I live outside Charlotte, North Carolina, and for most of my adult life, I had one embarrassing family secret. I was the person keeping my family financially alive. Not because they were poor. Not because they had no options. Because they had gotten comfortable knowing I would always rescue them. And that night, I finally understood something. They didn't love Madison. They loved what Madison could pay for. Growing up, I was always the quiet daughter. My older brother Tyler was the golden child. He was charming, confident, athletic, and somehow everything he did impressed my parents. If Tyler got a C, Dad said, at least he tried. If I got an A-, Mom asked why it wasn't an A. Tyler wanted a new truck? Dad found a way. I wanted a laptop for college? You're smart enough to work part-time. So I did. I worked nights at a restaurant, saved every dollar, earned scholarships, and eventually built a career in financial planning. By 30, I had a comfortable income. I wasn't rich. I wasn't living in a mansion. But I was financially responsible. I had savings. Investments. A modest house. No unnecessary debt. And apparently, that made me the family's emergency fund. The first time Tyler asked me for money, he called at 1:13 in the morning. "Madison, I messed up." He had bought a motorcycle he couldn't afford. I loaned him $4,800. Just until my bonus comes. His bonus never came. Then Mom needed help with a medical bill. Dad needed money for a business tax payment. Tyler needed help with his mortgage. Jessica needed money for their daughter's private school tuition. Every time, they promised the same thing. Just this once. And every time I believed them. Eventually, I stopped calling it lending. I called it helping. That word made it easier to swallow. Then came the lake house. My parents had bought a beautiful property when I was 27. 3 bedrooms. A huge deck. A private dock. It was supposed to be their retirement dream. But 3 years later, they couldn't afford the mortgage. My father sat across from me at a coffee shop and said, "We're not asking you to give us money." He paused. "We just need you to help for a little while." I agreed. I paid the mortgage. Every month. $2,780. Then property taxes. Then insurance. Then repairs. Over 2 years, I spent nearly $70,000 keeping that house afloat. And my parents never told anyone. Because they wanted everyone to believe they had built their retirement themselves. I didn't care. Or at least, I convinced myself I didn't. Then came my father's birthday. The entire family gathered at a fancy restaurant downtown. Tyler arrived 40 minutes late. Jessica complained about the parking. My mother wore a new designer dress. My father looked proud as he sat at the head of the table. And I brought a small gift. A vintage watch I'd found because Dad had once mentioned wanting one. He opened it. For about 3 seconds, he smiled. Then Mom said, "Madison, we need to talk about something." I already knew that sentence never ended well. What? She looked around the table. Your father, and I think it's time you start contributing more to the family. I almost laughed. Contributing? Tyler leaned back. Don't act confused. I looked at him. What exactly do you want? Jessica answered. Your parents are getting older. Tyler has his own family. You don't have kids. You have more flexibility. There it was. My lack of children had apparently become a family resource. My mother continued. You should help with the lake house renovation. I stared at her. What renovation? Dad cleared his throat. We want to add a guest wing. How much? I actually laughed this time. You're asking me for $85,000? Mom's face hardened. We're asking you to help your family. I looked at Tyler. Are you contributing? He shrugged. I've got expenses. Jessica added, we're already stretched. Something inside me went quiet. I looked around that table. Every person there had benefited from my money. And somehow I was still the selfish one. My mother raised her wine glass. Madison has always been difficult about money. Tyler laughed. That's because she thinks having a spreadsheet makes her better than everyone. Everyone laughed. Everyone except me. Then Mom said the sentence I'll never forget. Honestly, sometimes I wonder whether Madison even loves this family. I put my fork down. For the first time, I didn't feel angry. I felt tired. Deeply tired. I looked at my father. Do you know who pays the lake house mortgage? Silence. Mom's smile disappeared. Tyler stopped laughing. Dad looked confused. What are you talking about? I reached into my purse. I pulled out my phone. Then I opened my banking app. 24 months. I turned the screen toward them. Every month, $2,780. My mother's face changed. Dad stared at the numbers. Tyler whispered, no way. I continued. Property taxes. Insurance. Repairs. I looked at my mother. Remember the new roof? Her lips parted. I paid for it. Nobody moved. Then Tyler said, you never told us. I almost smiled. You never asked. My mother suddenly became defensive. We would have paid you back. When? She didn't answer. I looked at my father. Do you know how much I've paid for this family over the last 6 years? He shook his head slowly. $146,000. Jessica's eyes widened. Tyler looked at the table. My mother whispered, that's impossible. I opened the spreadsheet. Would you like me to show you? Nobody spoke. Then Tyler suddenly became angry. You kept records? Of course. You were keeping score? No. I looked directly at him. I was keeping evidence. The table went completely silent. Then my father said something that surprised me. Madison, we never asked you to do all that. I nodded. You're right. I locked my phone. You didn't ask. My mother looked relieved. Then I added. You expected it. Her face fell. I stood up. Where are you going? She asked. Home. But dinner isn't over. I know. I picked up my coat. My mother whispered, you're being dramatic. I looked at her. No, Mom. I smiled for the first time that evening. I'm finally being honest. I walked out. But I hadn't told them the most important part. The lake house wasn't the only thing I had been paying for. 3 days earlier, I had discovered something. Something Tyler had been hiding. Something that would change everything. When I got home that night, I opened my laptop. I pulled up the bank statements. Then I opened an email I'd received that morning. The sender was an attorney. The subject line read, "Urgent, documents regarding Carter family property." I opened it. And the first sentence made my stomach drop. "Ms. Carter, based on the records you provided, you may have been financially responsible for an asset that was never legally transferred into your parents' ownership." I read the sentence twice. Then I looked at the lake house paperwork. My name was there. Not as a cosigner. Not as a guarantor. As the person who had purchased it. Years ago. Without even realizing what my father had done. I kept scrolling. And then I saw another name. Tyler Carter. My brother. There was a document attached. I opened it. My eyes widened. Because Tyler hadn't just been spending my parents' money. He had been using the lake house as collateral for a business loan. And if that loan went unpaid, I could lose everything. Including my own home. I sat there in silence. For years, I thought my family had been taking advantage of my kindness. I was wrong. They had been building their entire financial life on top of me. And now they had made one mistake. They had finally pushed me far enough that I stopped being afraid of what would happen if I said no. I picked up my phone. I called the attorney. "Mr. Reynolds?" "Yes, Madison? I need you to prepare something for me." "What?" I looked at the documents again. "I want every financial obligation connected to my family removed from my name." There was a pause. "Are you sure?" I looked out the window. For the first time in years, I felt completely calm. "Yes." Then I added, "And I want to know exactly how much they owe me. Because this time, I wasn't going to ask for an apology. I was going to ask for the truth." And the next morning, my mother called me. I didn't answer. Then Tyler called. I didn't answer. Then my father called. I answered. His first words were, "Madison, what did you do to your brother?" I looked at the legal documents sitting on my kitchen table. And I said, "Nothing." I paused. "Not yet." My father's voice became cold. "What does that mean?" I looked at the clock. "Ask Tyler. He's your brother. And I'm his sister. Then act like it." I almost laughed. That's exactly what I'd been doing for 6 years. There was silence. Then Dad said, "You can't abandon your family because you're angry." "I'm not angry." "Then why are you doing this?" "Because I'm done." He hung up. 20 minutes later, Tyler appeared at my front door. He wasn't smiling anymore. He looked exhausted. "Madison, we need to talk." "No." He stared at me. "You don't even know what I'm going to say." "I know exactly what you're going to say." He stepped closer. "Please." That word used to control me. Not anymore. I opened the door halfway. "Tell me the truth." His face changed. "What?" "The business loan." He froze. For several seconds, he said nothing. Then he whispered, "Who told you?" I shook my head. "So it's true." He looked down. "Madison, it wasn't supposed to happen like this." "What wasn't?" "I had some problems with the business." "How much?" He swallowed. "About $120,000. I stared at him. "And the lake house?" He didn't answer. "Tyler." He finally looked at me. "I used it as collateral." My chest tightened. "Without telling me." "I thought Dad owned it." "He didn't." Tyler's expression changed. "I know that now." "No." I shook my head. You knew. He looked away. And that was when I realized the truth was even worse. You knew I was paying the mortgage. He remained silent. You knew the house was legally connected to me. Still silent. And you used it anyway. He finally whispered. I was going to fix everything. I stepped back. That is what everyone always says. He looked at me with tears in his eyes. You're my sister. And you used that word every time you needed money. He didn't have an answer. I closed the door. That was the last conversation we had for almost 4 months. My attorney moved quickly. The documents were complicated, but the truth was simple. My father had transferred the property into a family trust years earlier, with me as the financial beneficiary. I had been making every payment. Tyler had used documents he shouldn't have had access to. The bank froze the collateral arrangement once my attorney challenged it. For the first time, Tyler couldn't hide behind me. And neither could my parents. Then something unexpected happened. My mother called. I almost ignored her. But I answered. Her voice was different. Not angry. Not demanding. Broken. Madison, I need to apologize. I said nothing. She continued. We should have told you. Yes. We thought you could handle it. I closed my eyes. That's not an excuse. I know. She started crying. I think we convinced ourselves that because you were successful, you didn't need anything from us. I swallowed. Mom, I didn't need money from you. What did you need? I looked around my quiet house. To know that you loved me even when I wasn't useful. She went silent. That sentence seemed to hurt her more than anything else I'd said. Then she whispered. I do love you. I hope that's true. But you can't just disappear. I didn't disappear. I said softly. I stopped rescuing you. That was the beginning of the change. Not forgiveness. Not reconciliation. Just truth. My father eventually admitted he had known about Tyler's loan. He claimed he thought the business would recover. It didn't. Tyler had to sell the business. He sold his expensive truck. Jessica went back to work. They moved out of their large house and into a smaller one. For the first time, they lived within their means. And strangely enough, they survived. That was the lesson I had been too afraid to learn. They didn't need me. They needed to stop depending on me. A few months later, my mother invited me to Thanksgiving. The same holiday that had once been filled with arguments and expectations. I almost said no. Then I decided to go. When I arrived, the house felt different. No designer decorations. No fake smiles. No pretending. Mom hugged me. Dad shook my hand. Tyler stood in the kitchen. For a moment, nobody knew what to say. Then he walked toward me. Madison. I nodded. I owe you an apology. You do. He smiled sadly. You're not going to make this easy, are you? No. He laughed. And for the first time in years, it didn't feel forced. I've been going through everything, he said. What everything? All the money you gave us. I looked at him. I'm not asking for it back. I know. He pulled an envelope from his pocket. I'm starting anyway. I opened it. Inside was a check. $1,000. Tyler. It's not much. It's not about the amount. He nodded. I know. He looked at me. I'm trying to become someone who doesn't need his little sister to save him. That sentence stayed with me. Because I realized something. I had spent years thinking my family needed saving. But maybe the person who needed saving most was me. I had confused sacrifice with love. I had confused guilt with responsibility. I had believed setting boundaries made me selfish. It didn't. It made me honest. Over the next year, I rebuilt my life. The money I had once spent rescuing everyone else went into my retirement account. I started traveling. I bought a small cabin in the mountains. I took weekends off without feeling guilty. And I learned how peaceful life can feel when your money belongs to you. 6 months later, my mother called again. "Madison, can you come over?" "Why?" "I want to show you something." When I arrived, she handed me a folder. Inside was a list. Every dollar my parents owed me. They had gone through their finances. They had sold unnecessary belongings. They had cut expenses. And they had started paying me back. Not because I demanded it. Because they finally understood. I looked at the total. $146,000. I closed the folder. "Mom, you don't have to pay all of this." She shook her head. "We do." "Why?" "Because you spent years proving you loved us." Her eyes filled with tears. "Now it's our turn to prove that we love you." I couldn't speak. She hugged me. And this time, I didn't feel responsible for fixing anything. I just let myself be her daughter. A year after that disastrous birthday dinner, we had another family dinner. Same family. Different people. Dad raised his glass. "I'd like to say something." Everyone looked at him. He turned toward me. "To Madison." I smiled awkwardly. He continued. "For years, we called her independent." He paused. We didn't realize we were using that word as an excuse to depend on her. Nobody laughed. Nobody looked away. He lifted his glass. "She's my daughter." He smiled. "And I'm proud of her." I felt tears forming. Not because I needed his approval. But because, for the first time, I could accept it without needing it. Later that evening, I stepped outside. The air was cold. The house behind me was warm and full of voices. My mother came outside. "You okay?" I nodded. "Yeah." She smiled. "I know things aren't perfect." "No." I looked toward the driveway. "But they're real now." She hugged me. And I realized that sometimes families don't become stronger because everyone stays together. Sometimes they become stronger because people finally stop lying to each other. I still help my parents occasionally. But now they ask. I still talk to Tyler. But he doesn't ask for money. And if he ever does, I know I can say no. Without guilt. Without fear. Without explaining myself. Because I finally learned the difference between being generous and being used. And if you're listening to this because you're the person everyone calls when something goes wrong, please remember something. You are allowed to stop. You are allowed to protect your money. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to walk away from people who only love what you provide. Setting a boundary doesn't mean you stopped loving someone. Sometimes, it's the first time you start loving yourself. My name is Madison Carter. And the day I stopped paying for my family's lies wasn't the day I lost my family. It was the day I finally found myself. And honestly, that was worth every dollar I ever lost.